Hello everyone! In today's video I want to show you exactly how I paint this gold sunflower bud vase, and then it's also going to have the finishing details where I go in and burn the little lines and the little details and the little dots at the end once I'm done painting. So it's basically the whole process other than the initial burn. Alright, so the paints. I have my paints off to the side here, as you can see, and I'm using just a little paintbrush to go in and add my paint to the wood. The watercolors that I'm using are just a variety of handmade watercolors. I really love handmade watercolors, and if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that by now because I use them almost exclusively all the time. They're my favorite. So if you're wondering, like, how are they different? What do you mean? Handmade watercolors? What's that? I've never heard of that before. Let me tell you, there's a whole world of watercolor makers who make handmade watercolors by hand. I have a couple of different makers that I really love and I purchase from them often, and I will link them below in the video description, but they are just so good. They're totally different than commercial watercolors. They have different consistencies, they have specialty pigments, like they're so cool. So anyway, I could talk about them forever, but that's not the point of this video. The ones that I have off to the side here are just a couple of golds that I'm doing my sunflower with. Now, painting with these kinds of watercolors on wood is actually very simple. I don't have to use any kind of watercolor ground or primer or anything like that. This is literally just the watercolor on the raw wood surface. I haven't done anything to the wood other than just sand it really nicely. That's it. That's all you have to do. One of the tricks to using watercolor on wood with wood burning like this is to utilize your wood burn lines as barriers, as like a moat between where you put down the watercolor and the rest of the wood. I like to burn really hot and dark and deep, so my wood burn lines are not surface level. They aren't just thin lines sitting on the surface of the wood. They are like etched into the wood. They are very deep, and that really works well with my watercolor technique because then it doesn't bleed and it doesn't have anywhere to go because you have created like a little moat around your castle. It's a little ditch, it's a little gap, and the water and watercolor won't bleed into other areas of the wood. They just stay localized to where you put them down. So that's one thing that I always tell people is if you don't want the watercolor to bleed, make sure you burn deep and dark enough that it won't do that. Another trick to using watercolors like this is to not use too much water. Yes, they are called watercolors. You are supposed to use water with them, and I do, but I don't water them down a lot. As you can see, this is very thick, this is very opaque and vibrant, and that is because of my water control. I don't flood my watercolor pans with water. I literally put maybe 2, 3, or 4 drops of water in my watercolor pans, and that is it. If I notice that the paint is getting dry as I go, I will add 1 drop of water, right? I don't want them to be super watery and watered down. I don't want them to be sheer. I want them to be bright and vibrant, almost like gouache or acrylics. Now that the watercolor part is done, I need to do the eye of my sunflower, so I'm going to wood burn it. I'm just using my ballpoint nib, and I have it at like a high heat because this is walnut, so you kind of have to burn a little bit hotter than you usually would with other traditional woods like cherry or basswood or anything like that. I'm going to go around the edge of the sunflower, and then I'm going to do the eye of the sunflower as well with this nib, and I'm just doing basic stippling, just basic dots. I like to overlap the dots so they kind of look randomized, and I just kind of go until I feel content with it. So now I'm going to go in with this brand new razor tip nib that I got recently. Oh my gosh, I freaking love this nib. It's a super, super, super microscopic ballpoint nib, and it gives the tiniest little dots. Now that that's done, I'm switching back over to my normal ballpoint nib, and I'm just gonna do some little dots, some little floaters in the negative space. Now, I also need to clean up some of my Woodburn lines, so I switched back to my burnishing nib, which is the nib that I originally did all the outlines of my petals with, and I just need to reburn some of the areas because I got some paint in the lines, and I don't like that. I like to have nice, crisp Woodburn lines, so I always go and clean them up afterwards. Now we're at the last step, which is burning in the detail lines in my petals. So I'm going to switch over to my large skew nib, and I burn through the paint deep enough and hot enough to get down to the wood, and I would burn all of my little detail lines. I get flack about this part from people sometimes because people are like, oh, you shouldn't burn through the paint. Burning through the paint's bad for you. It's toxic. Yes, I know. I know it's not great, but this is my art process. This is how I do it. This is how I like to do it. You know, I've experimented with all kinds of techniques on how to get crisp lines with the paint, including, well, what if you burn the lines first and then paint around them? Yeah, but do you know how painstakingly long that takes to do? It is so much faster to just paint the area and then wood burn your details through the paint rather than paint around all of the details without getting paint in your lines. So that's just a thing that I feel like I need to say because I'm sure there's someone who's going to be like, oh my gosh, you're burning through the paint? Like, why would you tell people to do that? Hush, it's fine. This is my art process. You don't have to do it this way. That's the beauty of it. You can do it your way, but this is just how I do it. Now it's time for final detail touch-ups. I'm gonna go back in and touch up just a little bit of the paint. As you can see here, there's just like a little thin spot next to this Woodburn line where it needs a little bit of love. So I'm gonna add a second layer just very gently and try not to get paint in the line that I just burned, right? And I'm gonna do that for a couple of these areas. Sigh, inevitably I did get paint in my line, so now I'm gonna go reburn some of those little areas and touch those back up. Yeah, very gently. And now we are good to go. If you have any questions about anything, please feel free to ask. Drop them below in the comments and I will answer. I always try to check my YouTube videos for comments and questions. I hope this video was helpful and I hope it gives you a little bit of insight on how you can also use watercolors on wood. Handmade watercolors are an absolute joy to use and I highly recommend them. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Bye.